Good afternoon, everyone. Big engine, big fuel. It's not me, but it is our next speaker who I have the pleasure of introducing, Mr. Bill Fowler. He has 19 years inside of the real estate technology community, and he said that he has found his absolute dream job as the Senior Director of Industry Relations at Compass. Previous to Compass, he wore many hats, including that of an MLS software vendor, industry consultant, a director at Zillow, and now he's managing the key relationships that drive business for one of the most visible and fast-moving brands in real estate. So it's my pleasure to welcome, and would you help me welcome Mr. Bill Fowler.
Hey. So exciting. I have things to give away. There's a list of names here I was told to do this. It looks like I have an echo. That thing is going to listen to all your conversations in your house. And then I have something for you to drink your coffee while you're talking about the thing. Well, you know. Let's see. Lucky. Adam Pope. Is Adam Pope in the room? No. Does anybody want to be Adam Pope? Just kidding. Russell Smith. Where's Russell Smith? Oh, man. I thought you were almost Russell. Mark Allen. Is the Mark Allen in the room? Oh, my. Rich, you are specifically excluded. Where's Sarah Cooper? Is Sarah Cooper here? Come on, Sarah Cooper. Nice work. Sarah, you can be like, yeah, it's all, I'm taking all the credit for this. Sean Murphy. Is there a Sean Murphy in the house? I saw Sean. He's not here either. Amy Geddes. Amy Gorse. Sorry, Amy Geddes-Gorse. Come on. And I'm sorry to make you walk all this way. Can I just throw it at you? I wouldn't do that. All right, this is more difficult than I thought it was going to be. Greg Moore, where's Greg Moore? Greg Moore's probably speaking somewhere. Timothy Thibault, that's French-Canadian. No. Jeffrey White. Come on, Jeffrey White. You get an echo dot. I mean, even if you don't even want it, it's just sell it. There you go. Congratulations, Jeff. Is Joseph Cullum in the room? Come on down. Come on down, Joseph. Travis. It's really nice. There you go. Congratulations. Hey, so thank you, RESO, for having me here. It is an honor to be on this stage. I've been involved with RESO for a while, as Rebecca said, with lots of hats. I've been doing this stuff for a long time. Like 19 years seems like longer than it should be. You know, like you get in this business and you look up and it's like, man, where do all these wrinkles come from? And why do I have all these drink tickets in my pockets at all times? So yeah, I started with Compass a little over about a year and a half ago. And my very first phone call was to Jeremy Crawford. And then I was like, Jeremy, I want to have this meeting and I want to talk to you about the things that Compass is doing. And I want to talk to you about how RESO can help, you know, involve the broker community. And we had this really long, very detailed conversation. And then he said, I'm leaving. So then I like copy pasted that conversation to Sam, and then it's led to this moment. And I really appreciate Sam inviting me to speak on stage today. So RESO is a really important organization. You know that because you're sitting here. For a lot of us, this is volunteer work. This is not a business trip necessarily. This is more of this, like the UN of real estate. This is a room where we can talk about the things that are important to all of us, and not necessarily as a competitor, but more of someone who believes that the things that we do here matter for all of us. So to that end, let's get started. Big engine, big fuel. So I live and I was born and raised in Huntsville, Alabama, and you probably know Huntsville because of Space Camp. And The reason why Space Camp is in Huntsville is because 50 years ago we built the Saturn V rocket, and it was not launched from Huntsville. That would have been messy, but it was built there and tested there. So I still live, I don't know, about 10 miles or so away from the test grounds where they still test rockets. So Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos's, space flight, they build rocket engines there still. So you hear noises, booms and test fires and stuff. Still, it's pretty cool until your windows break. But the F1 engine, which was built in my hometown and tested there, is the largest engine ever created. Still remains that way. It was built in the mid-'60s. And that's the thing that, with 1.5 million pounds of thrust, pushed the astronauts up to the moon. They did a little tour, stepped down, brought them back, splash. That's the F1 engine. And the F1 engine is the sexy part of that story. The not sexy part of that story, but it's still just as important, is the fuel that powered that engine. And the fuel in that engine had to be invented right alongside of that engine. So you have this beautiful Saturn V rocket, which still stands at the base of the Space and Rocket Center. I drive by it all the time going to and from the airport. And that thing is just a big hunk of metal without the fuel that was inside it. And the fuel, oddly enough, is kerosene. But they didn't realize that at first. Kerosene, obviously, is coal oil. Now it's mixed with oxygen and all kinds of other stuff. But back then, it was just straight kerosene. But again, the innovation that took place that we all know about is the rocket. The other part of that innovation was the fuel. So national brokers have built this engine and are building these engines, the most powerful engines that the real estate industry has ever seen. The thing that we are not innovating, or that we need to begin to think about innovating, is the fuel to power those engines. So the big broker engine back in the 1990s, back when I was first starting in this business, the big broker engine was a PDA. Remember those things? Palm Pilots? I mean, that was the most advanced thing we had had since the cell phone, which was the most advanced thing we had had since the automobile for real estate. Back then, if you had a cell phone in a car, you could make as much money as you had the energy to make. So the engine was pretty simple back then. Then the engine gets a lot more complicated. Around about the early 2000s, the internet shows up and everyone realizes that you can search for properties online. So you weren't riding along with the realtor in his or her car looking at street signs with a book in your hand. You were going online. And that was a revolution. And revolutions in this business usually mean panic. And the panic was in the form of, now data was available outside of the black box, which is the MLS, which was scary. And rightfully so, we were all a little worried about that. What happened at mid-year in 2000 is you walk into this trade show, and alongside the MLS book printer and the people who print the reflective signs were a sea of IDX vendors, people who were building websites for individual agents. And the only way they were going to do that is to get a data feed, and the data feed came from the MLS, and the MLS had to provide a data feed that was based on policy. So at mid-year 2000, we voted on IDX policy. So just looking at this graphic, the fuel that was available back then was limited, and rightfully so, because these were non-members. These were just who knows who, IDX vendor. They were receiving MLS data, which is the most important thing that we have. So we limited that, and we had an agreement that was as thick as your arm, because it needed to be policed to make sure that those people, non-members, not trusted, who were receiving our data, that we could sue them when they misused it. The engineers of that technology were tech vendors. Brokers were not technologists. I worked for a company that built products for brokers. They didn't do this themselves. And the policy, of course, as we said, was IDX. Internet Data Exchange, and back then it was also called broker reciprocity. That is, you take my data and show it online, and I'll take your data and I'll show it online as well. It's commission and cooperation extended outside of the black box that's the MLS. The broker tech engine in 2019 is infinitely more complex. There are websites upon websites. Josh, with his before Zillow and after Zillow, Zillow changed the landscape. Realtor.com changed the landscape, and MLS data is everywhere, remains everywhere. The broker, as you see now with the engineer, the broker is in-house. The big broker technology is in-house. Compass has an office in Seattle. It's brand new. It's down the street from Zillow's office, which is down the street from Amazon's office, which is down the street from Uber's office. We're sharing the same technology. We're sharing the same talent. This was unheard of 10 years ago, that a broker would have the funding or the power to create their own in-house technology on that level. I report to someone who was operations at Amazon. These people are not from real estate. They're bringing new ideas, new technology, new everything. The fuel is still limited, and it should be. The data is what we have. The fuel is the only thing we all live on. The engine, however, has gotten tons bigger. The policy has not changed. The policy has been washed over, the policy has been recreated and rebranded, but it has largely not changed since the early 2000s when we're giving data to vendors for very specific reasons. The data is given away based on an assumption of use, which is you give IDX data with the assumption of public consumption. You give a VOW feed with the expectation that you have a virtual office. 90% of the feeds that Compass and a lot of national brokers utilize are VOWs. We are not a VOW, but we adhere to the rules because it's the best feed available. Okay, back to the fuel, the engineer, and the policy. Again, we're speaking about this giant engine that is still being created based on the fuel that we have right now. The fuel is limited, and it's limited for very specific reasons, very good specific reasons. IDX fields should be limited because you're giving that information away to someone who's going to build a product for a broker member. You give an IDX feed to someone who's not a member. That was what the policy dictated when it was first created. You give a VOW feed to a broker member who is building a virtual office. I don't know how many VOWs there are actually in action in the country, but there are thousands more VOW feeds than there are actual VOWs. The engineer is now in-house. My very first meeting at Compass was I walk into a room full of developers, and these are kids. I mean, I can say that now that I'm old, but these are kids who came from Uber and Amazon and Twitter and Facebook. And they're looking at me and they're like, okay, this is the guy who knows the industry. Would you please tell us why we can't have all the data? Like, why can't we just have the stuff that we need to build the thing that we need to build? And I go to the whiteboard, you know, and I'm drawing these lines and sad face emojis, you know, and they begin to question their life choices. But the point is that they're not getting what they want. And now they have a greater understanding of exactly why that is and what we need to do about it to make sure that they do. It's the policy. It's the policy that prevents a VOW feed in Dallas from being identical to the VOW feed in Houston, or an IDX feed from being consumable with automation different in Utah than it is in New Mexico. It's the policy that prevents a lot of my friends who are in this room right now from doing what they want to do for me, but their menu of services is limited. So I walk into a new market, and this is how the conversation goes. Hey, I'm Bill with Compass. Hey, Bill with Compass. How's it going? Going great. We're building a website. We're going to come to your town, and we'd love to have some data to do that. Great. So here are my options. What are you building? Well, we have this front-facing thing. Great, IDX feed sign here. Well, but we have a back office thing too. Well, here's your back office feed. Well, we want to display this part to the consumer, and this part we're going to use for all kinds of cool stuff. We don't even know what we're going to build yet. It's just going to be awesome, whatever it is. Then you're probably a VOW, but we're not really a VOW. Well, here's your VOW feed. It has 99% of what you need. So we get the VOW feed, we make sure there's a login, we adhere to the local VOW rules and the national VOW rules, and everybody's fine. Until my developer says, hey, there are no date fields in this VOW feed. Not a single one. This happens. And then we do the same thing in a different city, and there are no documents in this feed. So we're getting what we want in pieces, and what I'm suggesting to you is that the engine has been created and will be created. The fuel hasn't caught up. And it's not because of anybody's being rigid. It's not because of anybody's not helping or not doing the right thing for the broker. It's that the policy doesn't allow you to do what we all want to do. We're all building this rocket. Like, we're all constructing this rocket. And the purpose of that is to elevate the industry. And what do I mean by elevate the industry? Everybody in here is paid because a broker sells a house. By some method, you are paid by extension based on a real estate transaction. That's all of our goal, is to help that thing go bigger, better, faster. We all believe that. And I'm telling you, within the hallowed halls of RESO, that the thing that is, I don't want to say stifling, that's too negative. I want to say the thing that is like holding that back slightly right now is that we don't have the proper policy in place to allow the menu item to give every broker what they want, when they want, how they want it. So what we've done at RESO is we've solved the data dictionary problem. We know what the data should look like. And man, when RESO started that process, what a monumental task. Bedrooms were called different things on different sides of the bay. Fixed, solved, largely. The next step was the web API. So we have what the data should look like and sound like and feel like, and now we need to know how it's going to go from point A to point B. Point A to point B, API. Everybody knows that the API is the answer. Everybody. We're going to have some trouble implementing that over time, but it's going to happen. We solved that. RESO did that. RESO did that. And then now we're talking payloads. So you see the process here is standards. We're applying standards where they are most needed. The industry is bleeding, and we're putting on those bandages where it belongs first. Stop the emergency issues. Data dictionary, web API, and payloads are part of that. RESO is not a technology organization. RESO is a standards organization. What your big brokers are asking for are standards, standard service, and a standard menu item from coast to coast that will give all of us what we want, and that is data security first and foremost, and providing a service that is equal across all brokerages, and then thirdly, providing the thing, the fuel to fuel all of our rockets, no matter how big they are. So what I'm suggesting is the broker advisory group creates a subgroup of some kind. Sam will help me with the language. But I want to personally recruit big brokers to come into this organization and contribute to this conversation. And I want large MLSs in that room as well. So a subgroup of the broker advisory group, whatever that happens to look like. But RESO is doing incredibly important work. And the big brokers are recognizing that and want to participate. We have to have an avenue to do that. And I'm more than happy to help lead that. When Compass is going to come along and help create that group, you can bet everybody else is going to want to come along too, because no one trusts us. That's fine. I'll use that. But for now, we have to acknowledge that the big brokers are not being served, but we're partners. We're not, I'm through bitching about this. I just want to do something about it, and I want to do it with our partners who are in the room. All right, I don't want to answer questions. So if you want to talk to me, I'm a lobby bar guy, so let's talk. All right. Thanks, Sam.